Good morning, friends at Heritage. How are you doing today? So, I've been thinking a lot about transitions lately. Perhaps it has to do with this time of year as we watch the leaves turn bright and then to a golden color of yellow, followed by the leaves detaching and floating gently to the ground. I think about the quote that goes, "Autumn teaches us the beauty of letting go." As I was hunting for that quote while writing today's reflection, I found another one, and this time by Winnie the Pooh. It's the first day of autumn, a time of hot chocolatey mornings and toasty marshmallow evenings, and best of all, leaping in the leaves. As there is some grief and loss with the falling of the leaves and the changing of the seasons, there is also room for joy. In spite of this, we have trouble with transitions, don't we? We sometimes have trouble with letting go. Yesterday, I had the great honor of being invited to attend a party for someone at the congregation in St. Andrews. And it was Shirley's birthday slash leaving party because she's moving to another province. And I got to witness how members of that congregation gracefully said goodbye to one who is beloved, how funny stories were shared through tears, and how grief was tempered with celebration of a life well lived and shared within the community. It was a beautiful and heartwarming thing to witness. It showed me the very soul of that congregation. But in my line of work, I also get to see people as they struggle with or they sort of muddle through life's transitions. Sometimes we don't have time to prepare and steady ourselves before our world tilts on its axis. Changes in health or a sudden death of a loved one can rip us out of our old lives and cast us adrift in a sea of unknown shores and depths. We can struggle because there isn't a map, neither a map of our new reality or a map that shows us what to do next. So rather than swimming through those waters with a sense of direction and purpose, we find ourselves just barely treading water. In 1967, two researchers named Holmes and Raw asked the question, can we determine which life events are the most difficult? And they figured out how to do so by correlating stressful events with their likelihood of causing illness, because stress wears down your body, wears down your immune system, and it causes illness. So, after surveying thousands of people, they came up with a list ranking the life's most traumatic events. Can you guess what made the top 10? So I'm just going to give you a moment. This is a chance to impress your neighbors sitting around you and just holler out what you think, what any of the 1 to 10 top stressors in life would be. What life events are most stressful? Here you go. Tell me. All right. I will give you the list just in case you're curious. So starting from number 10 and going all the way to the top one to number one. Here we go. It's like the Dave Letterman top 10 list. Here we go. So, most stressful life events are retirement is number 10. Marital reconciliation. So you think reconciliation is a good thing, but it's really hard, right? So that's actually quite stressful. Losing your job. Marriage. So again, something that we see as positive and a good thing is quite stressful because it comes with so much change and so many expectations sometimes. Personal injury or illness, the death of a close family member or friend. This one's interesting. You might not have guessed this one. Imprisonment. That's right up there. It's number 4. Marital separation, divorce, and then the number 1 is death of a spouse or a child. So, by a show of hands, how many of you have experienced at least one of these top 10 life events? Just raise your hands. Look around. We are not alone in our suffering. Whether we know it or not, probably somebody here in this room has had to struggle with the exact same situations or feelings that we might be currently struggling with. And that's the value of community. If we choose to, we can let people in to share our lives and to help carry our mutual burdens. As isolated as we often feel, stressful life events are something that we all share. But as I look into what is known as the Holmes and Ross stress scale, I can see that it requires further development. So, first off, it was created over 50 years ago. The world has changed. Our daily lives and context are different now. We live in a post pandemic, internet influenced, and faster paced world. Surely we've added some new stressors to that list. And further, the Holmes and Ross scale was conducted on US sailors. And so that's an overall younger cohort of people to be testing. And so, what would they know about the depth and range of changes and challenges that we face as we get older? I bet you a lot of data is missing there. One significant stressor I feel that is overlooked in that list is downsizing. When we move out of a house or a condo, we're tasked with sorting through all of our stuff, figuring out what's essential, what can fit into the new space, and what we absolutely can't live without. Especially when this change is precipitated by a sudden injury or a change in health or financial circumstance, it can be really traumatic. We spend a lifetime accumulating things and creating a home only to have turned around and then dismantle it. Our identities are wrapped up in our stuff. For example, say that you're a baker and you love creating cakes and desserts. It's one of your most favorite pastimes. When you move into a smaller kitchen or even into a space that doesn't even have a kitchen, then you're going to have to sell or give away all of your pans. You lose not only that hobby, but you also lose what feels like a piece of yourself as well. Why aren't we equipped with a how to guide on how to learn to let go? Why do we as a society not do a better job of preparing ourselves for the last chapters of our lives? Surely we can't be thinking that avoiding the topic will make it go away. On the surface, it's easier to see that the tenets of Buddhism can offer us something on dealing with loss and change. One of the first things you learn in Buddhism is that all things are impermanent. Everything eventually changes, whether it's at a glacial pace or not. And the thing is, once you accept that nothing lasts forever, it starts to become easier to detach ourselves from things, from our stuff, from our concept of identity, and even from our own expectations. When we start to accept the idea of impermanence, it consequently becomes easier to let things go. We cling less and release more. We stop holding our breath, trying to slow the clocks and hold on to a moment forever. We allow things to just be. And by doing so, we are able to enjoy the present moment more. So many of the practices of Buddhism are about letting go of attachment. In Christianity, on the other hand, it's much harder to suss out the lessons on detachment and impermanence from within our tradition. Sometimes the language that we use in Christianity gives us a false sense of permanence, solidity, and security. So, for instance, in today's psalm, it describes God as being faithful and sure. That's pretty solid, right? How about when we sing that God is like a rock, or we say that Christ is our chief cornerstone? If we look at our older hymns, especially those from the 1700s and 1800s, we find that sense of solidity everywhere. Think of it. So, like, how firm a foundation, ye saints of the Lord, is laid for your faith in God's excellent word. Or how about the old favorite? We have an anchor that keeps the soul steadfast and sure while the billows roll. Fastened to the rock which cannot move, grounded firm and deep in the Savior's love. When we sing those hymns and we use that language, it can feel good, doesn't it? We like feeling sure and we like knowing what's next. We can lean on our certainty. And that's why fundamental and conservative Christianity can be so attractive to some people. We like knowing that in the midst of our swirling and sometimes chaotic lives, there is a God who is immutable, omnipotent, and in charge. And at least that is sure. But then what happens when we experience one of life's stressful events? What happens when we experience a loss on a large scale and it shakes us to the core? What happens when a terrible tragedy occurs, or like this week when war is declared? What happens when life or our emotions get so overwhelming that we can no longer feel God's presence? What happens then to our faith? And the short answer is we lose it, sometimes temporarily, sometimes forever. After Jesus died, every single one of his disciples lost their faith. When Mary Magdalene told them that Jesus had been raised, not one of them believed her. Some ran to the tomb to see it for themselves. Some didn't believe until they actually felt Jesus' wounds. None of them had a faith strong enough to weather Jesus' death. They felt that God had failed them, or maybe that God and God's promises weren't real after all. But what if we set aside the idea that God is infallible, immovable, unchangeable, and never one to let us down or see us suffer? What if instead we saw it as our relationship with God that is enduring? That the link between us and our Creator, the Spirit of life, the Ruach, which means the breath of life, what if that relationship is everlasting? Because then, regardless of our circumstance, we would be held in God's love. Regardless of whatever challenge or situation or tragedy that could befall us, we would be upheld in that connection, that belonging and relationship with God. What if God were less of a noun, like a being or an image or a place? And instead, what if God were more like a verb, a presence that is loving us, guiding us, reaching out to us, caring for us, interbeing with us? In times of trial, our questions would be less, is there a God? And if so, where are they? And instead, we would seek the answers to, how is my connection with God today? What do I need to do to become more aware of it? How can my thoughts and actions lead me to deepen my relationship with God amidst the pain and the brokenness of the world? We as Christians can further practice detachment by reflecting on the resurrection. Christ's resurrection demonstrates for us the life, death, the new life cycle, or the birth, death, and rebirth cycle. If everything changes, then that means that everything is somewhere along that cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. By holding Christ's resurrection as the fundamental tenet of our faith, we are affirming our belief in impermanence, that all things change. In this light, change is never wrong or evil. It is part of a beautiful, cosmic, and sacred cycle of living, death, and rebirth. The quote by Keala, which we started with today, which goes, "Autumn teaches us the beauty of letting go," it actually has two parts. The full quote is, "Autumn teaches us the beauty of letting go. Growth requires release, and that's what the trees do." May we be like trees today. May we grow in our faith and understanding. May we release old beliefs that no longer serve us. May we joyfully participate in the sacred cycle of life, gracefully letting go of who we used to be and what we used to believe, so that we can embrace all that we are becoming. Remember, as long as you have life, you are always becoming. You are always journeying in relationship with God. Blessed be the cycles of our lives. Amen.